What we're going to do today is use the CEREC Omnicam to take the scans necessary for MIS's MCenter to prepare a custom zirconia abutment using a titanium base. Other labs are likely to require a similar scanning process. We'd start by adding a patient. Just to keep the video short, I'll use an existing patient. Click Show All Patients, and we're going to add a new case. This opens up an example of the patient's mouth. Since we're doing a single scan today, we're clicking on the single crown button, single crown with a full contour. After that, we select the tooth number, in this case number 12. Notice the process bar opens at the bottom. Anytime you see a green underline, that means that all the necessary information has been submitted for this step and you can move on. If you see a red underline, that means additional information is required before you can move on. So I'll click on selecting the material. For this case, we'll use a zirconium oxide. And we're choosing the shade according to the different shade guides, A2. And I'll just pick A2 again. This step is not as required. Click OK to move on. Notice the details are on the right on the case details. I can add more tooth numbering if I like, or if that's everything, I click Acquisition to begin scanning. So there are 3 required scans. The most important is the upper jaw, since that's where the implant is, we've determined, but we want to do one additional scan. So in order to add that, on the right side, we click to the Add Catalog button. We want to add a gingival mask upper. It's the upper jaw. We want to gather additional information about the gingiva. So by clicking on this button, it adds a 4th scan to the bottom. Click on Minimize to get that out of the way so we can watch what we're scanning, and we'll go through the process for the 4 scans from left to right. Starting with the lower jaw. I'm going to be scanning a model. That change in music lets me know that the camera lost its position. So I needed to go back to a familiar spot to gather information to keep scanning. Okay, rotate the image to make sure I don't have any open spots. Looks quite good. Notice I do not need the full jaw since we're only concerned with this section. Moving on to the other, opposing. I'm doing here is scanning the dentition. It's easily recognizable. And then moving on towards the open space. See, I'm picking up a scan post. You can hear the change in music again. So I went back up to the dentition so the camera would recognize my location. I'm going to rotate, see if I see any opening areas. There's one towards the top there. Fill that one in quickly. Oh, you can also see on the top of the scan post, there's an open area, mostly blocked by this tooth here. Very difficult to see. See if we can fill it in a little bit though. Much better. Okay, now we move on to a buccal scan. For this, we need to remove the scan post. If you leave the scan post in the patient's mouth, it can often interfere with the bite, and you need the patient to bite down naturally. Since I don't need it for this scan and the next scan, I'm going to remove it. Now I need to scan enough of this area so that the computer will be able to align the previous 2 scans. Take a look around, like a little bit more on the occlusal surface if I can. Okay, moving on to the final 4th scan. This time we want to get a good image of the gingiva around the site now that the scan post has been removed. Okay, if I'm happy with the scan, I can move on to the next step. Oh, it's indicating it wants a bit more information here. All set, moving on. At this point, the computer does some extra processing work to fill in the spaces, make a high-resolution image of the 4 scans, using as much data as it can. This usually takes 1 to 2 minutes. Sped it up a little bit here for the video. What it's also going to do is to use the first 2 scans combined with the buccal scan to align all of them together. That way we have an accurate image of the patient's bite while still gathering information from the buccal side. So you can see here all the scans put together, including the scan post, which comes into contact with the opposing jaw, so I would not have been able to do a buccal scan with the scan post inside. Moving on. There are options here to trim the area should you want to remove some data or to draw the margin around the abutment. Neither of these are required. You can kind of just send the data as it is. So we'll click Connect. This will prompt us to log in to the Sirona Connect software, where we can send the data directly to any lab stored within Sirona's system, including the MCenter. Review of our case. If it's correct, we click Enter Order button. Notice how the case file was already uploaded to the cloud. And in another video, we'll show how we would add the MCenter for the first time. It'll be there every time, and additional instructions to send to get the case finished.